where the mountains of Mourne sweep down to the sea. There is magic in the line, just as there is magic in these mountains.
From Newcastle we explored the Mourne mountains. Sometimes we left the car and walked, usually having the mountains to ourselves, except for sheep and an occasional shepherd, who, like everyone else we met over here, had a kindly word of greeting for us.
Up to the Silent Valley, the two enormous reservoirs, supplying Belfast 30 miles away with 25 million gallons a day.
Granite is a tough nut to crack, but these mountain farmers have the knack of splitting it. They chip along the grain of the granite, put in a line of chisels and tap gently and evenly till the stone opens. Oh, it looks easy till you try it. Still, a man's will is his life, the proverb has it, and the Ulsterman's will can move mountains, even the Mournes. These men are used to working with stone all their lives, and they have the patience, the skill and the strength that's needed. The stones come in handy just the same. There are miles of stone walls that look as if they'd been knitted by giant knitting needles, and every stitch was a stone.
Well, the business started around 1960 with three brothers and my father in it. There was what you called a relief scheme then, where they took the men of the brew or the dole, whatever you like to call it, and they worked out in the roads, and we started putting builders into them from two different quarries in Newcastle, and that was where we started first to work at it. And we went on from there. Then we opened up into one quarry in Newcastle, and we brought our sons all into the business, 5 of them's in it, and they seem to be all agreeing well, and we hope that they keep on at it. It's a different day now to then. It was all hard work. It was all plugs and feathers and cutting with hammers and such like.
We would have left here in the morning probably at 7:30, and you took your lunch with you. You went up into the mountain, and that you spent your day there till probably 5 o'clock or 5:30, whatever the case might be. And that was where you were at all day. And sometimes it wasn't that nice in the winter time with snow and whatever, but as according to where you were at and what you were doing, a lot of them had wee shelters, maybe just a shelter over the top and open right round. A lot of them had that, so they had.
There was no health and safety whatsoever. They didn't know what that meant. There was no toilets, no nothing in the mountains. Now everything has to be 100%, but there wasn't a thing.
The Mourne granite is one of the hardest stones. A good stone for cutting. That's the chisel line there. It really opens the stone. They always would have done it now in the olden times. These here is what they call felling and plug. This is the traditional way. You put them in, and we need somebody with a strong back and a weak mind to hammer those in.
You can see the crack in the stone coming here. That's the chisel line where my father had cut earlier.
Some of the days that we could stand out would be whenever we were cutting big long stones, maybe 20 foot long, and you would have put a track right down along neck first, bored the holes, and then you hammered it. You seen the whole lot flying over, and you know it is memorable. It is to see those things happening. First of all, you make sure it's free. You blast them out. Then it was what they call it, the black powder, and you made sure it was free right round. Put a wee shot at the back of them, brought the block out first, and then you start and cut it up.
I'm sure you've seen them, that the beds, some of them would be 3 foot high, some of them would be 4 foot, and such like. But you always made sure, if you were going for a 4 foot bed, you made sure it was clean right round, and not let it come then. You went way back into the corner and bored one hole, and a bit of gunpowder or blasting powder, blew it out. And if you had to use gelatinite, it would have shattered it. But the powder just blew it out without doing it any harm.
They knew their stone, and they wouldn't have blasted a stone out till they made sure it was clear right round.
And they knew right away what the reed was. And then there was the other one, the hard way and the board. The reed and the stone is almost right round the whole Mournes anyway, north and south. That's the best cutting way of the stone, north and south. And if you go east and west, that's what the hardest way of the stone. And then the board of the stone would have been second best, you know. You turned it over. You had to turn it over for the board.
But them old men would have knew by looking at the pickle, by looking at the way it split, wee bits are sitting there. Yet they would have knew where it was a reed, where it was a hard way board. They would have knew what it was right away. They just knew their stone.
And they never had to watch their jump where they could have sat and looked round them and been walking away like that. Never didn't care whether they ever looked down at it. They knew where they had to hit at every time. Anybody now left a hammer and looked round, they'd take a bit of skin off.
It was probably around the late 75 to the late 70s where we had an opening of doing a job in the Silent Valley Reservoir beside us of replacing all the stones in the lower dam.
You only could do it in the summertime. And when the water was down, you went down to the edge of the water and started there, and then if it went down farther, you got again. And then we done that, the wall along the top, we rebuilt it the whole way. That was from 77 to what, 80?
Yeah, but 84 we done an oil contract then, the lime dosing plant. It was quite a large building.
That's why we got a big saw. That was the first saw we got for it.
Well, obviously that got us into the cutting and processing of stone, which moved us into a totally different field of works. From there then we were asked about a job in Belfast. It was a restoration job, the Albert Memorial Clock. Very detailed building, the Albert Memorial Clock. And there was a lot of the detail had decayed and eroded over the years, which they were looking to get replaced. There's 4 lions takes care of the Albert Clock around the base of the Albert Clock, so they're there and keeping all predators away as such, if you like. But there was 3 of these lions were made brand new from scratch. They wanted to keep one of the existing, obviously, for historical reasons, and there was one that was in reasonable good condition, which we done a little bit of repair on, and they kept it there.
The saws are a lot more precise, less waste involved. The other machinery that we use are CNC saws, where we can put different shapes and profiles in. This has to be drawn up on a computer by 3D modelling. We can then program our machinery to cut whatever shape. The craft hasn't gone away. The craft that finishes the stone has still to happen. We would use like air tools now, whereas it used to be hammer and chisel. Some people use the hammer and chisel yet. The Mourne granite, I just love the look of it. It's a nice, warm stone to work with, very natural colour. There's just something about working at home with your own local stone.
The methods may change, but the stone doesn't change. It's still Mourne granite.
Previous to working in the tunnel, I worked out in what we would call the Bog of Dunnard as a quarryman for the late Mr. Isaac Hamilton. And one winter, on that winter, there come a heavy fall of snow and the mountains was closed down. Nobody could get into the mountain to work. So after being at home a while, I got fed up waiting on the snow to go away. I says, I'll go and look for a start in the tunnel. And that's how I come to be there. I went up and I asked about the start, and I was told I'd be here tomorrow morning. When I went there first, I went as what you would call a spanner man. And that was tightening the bolts on the machines as he'd directed it in, because they weren't as modern when I started in it as what we finished up with. Far superior stuff at the end of the tunnel. It had been drilling and been done in a quarter at a time. Then you rose to a machine man. If someone left, which we're doing pretty often, they were going. Some people maybe stayed a week, some people a fortnight, but they weren't staying too long. So you'd have got a machine. Then eventually I was on a machine for a good while drilling, then I was made shift boss. And was the shift boss till it was completely finished. I was about maybe 22 years of age. It wasn't a job for older men really. You had to be, I should say so, you should use an expression, you'd have to be in your prime to be working in it, you know. And there was no good of a man, say 50, 60 years of age, who would have been very useful, knowledgeable, but down in the tunnel you needed somebody, to use an expression, maybe a bit of a tougher element. We were working a 12-hour shift, so we were going on at 8 in the morning, we worked to 8 o'clock at night. And then the other shift, what we would call the back shift, coming on at 12 o'clock, they worked through to 8 o'clock the following morning. You went in there in the mornings and you started till, well, whatever you took over from the other shift. It could have been in the middle of just what we would call mucking out. Of the last shot that was fired, so you may have been an hour mucking out again before you were able to do any drilling or charging up yourself, you know. So it was repetition work all the time, you know. So, you thought you had achieved something, and there was days you went in, like every place else, there was days you went in and you worked hard and maybe hadn't as much success as some days that you thought you didn't work half as hard and go on better. You know, there's days things didn't just fall into place for you. I went in on a Sunday night and we started to drill. Started drilling and we're just about, I would say, 3 foot in when the drill started to stick with us, and there was like sand and water coming out. And couldn't understand it in any way. Anyhow, I went out eventually and I phoned this Dunnard in Newcastle. And I asked for the agent and spoke to him and explained to him what was happening. And he said to me, well, drill about 2'6" round and fire it until we see what's behind it. And we were there for 6 months, I think it was, before we got any farther. We had to drill big holes, 100 foot long, right round the diameter of the tunnel. And we built a big bulkhead and filled it up with, up on the roof with straw and things like that. Now, and we started what you call bogeeing, which is cement and water. and pumped it into these holes that we drilled 100 foot long, which were drilled into the cavity and the mountainside. Now, we filled it up, as I said before, with bales of straw, pushed it in as far as we could do. Now, the idea of that was that the grout went down, made its way down through the straw and settled hard as if it was stone. And when we thought we had it stopped, in fact we had it stopped, we decided when we started to move then again, we ribbed it then, took it in at about 2 foot at a time and ribbed it as we went along with big ribs in the tunnel to take the weight and such like. We got past, eventually got past, but it was quite a hold up at the time.
Norman loved his work. He really did. He was always heart and soul in it. He was a civil engineer. He was the water engineer's engineer, if you know what I mean. There was the contractor's engineer and there was the consultant's engineer. We worked on it as a student the year before, and then when he qualified and got his degree, he felt he was lucky to go back to the water commissioners and get a job there. And he was really delighted to have the job. He wasn't very well paid. He didn't get paid at all when he was a student, just he got his digs.
A spanner man, as he was known as then, was on 2 6 an hour, half a crown. And a machine man was on 2 9pence. He had 3 pence more. And the shift boss had, I think he had 3 3 in wages. When you started to work for 12 hours, you were coming home after tax now, I would say, with maybe about 30 shillings for your day. And that was a lot of money. Men working outside, on the dam outside, where the entrance to the tunnel was on 1 shilling and 11 pennies. So the money was different in the tunnel, and that's what really took us down it. The shift bosses was responsible for a fortnight, for keeping it to the measurements and levels of the engineers. You see, how we took the levels at the face was the engineers took levels and they hung chains, 2 chains from the roof of the tunnel. And one was a certain bit along with another. That was to make allowance for the dip in the tunnel, you see. So I would have sent a man, or whoever was your boss at the occasion, would have sent a man up to hold a lit candle at the face. And you lit a candle in each one of your chain links. And then you levelled them until you got the 3 as 1. So you were back there looking over the candles at this man at the face. I know you couldn't see him, but you could see the candle, and you'd be shouting up a bit and down a bit, and a bit to your right, a bit to your left, mark it. When you got them, 3 candles burning as 1. So that's how we, as shift bosses, took our levels. And say maybe every fortnight, the engineers would come in and advance it, which they would have usually done probably maybe on a Sunday. Now I come in, strangely, we see me here on a Sunday night, and I took a level on my side, and the shift boss on the other side, who I think now, quite a few years ago, you know, if he had a bit of a name, was a chap by the name of Sandy Heaney. But he took a level on his side, and I drilled a hole through from the Dinny Water side into the Silent Valley side, and I come out on the edge of his red paint. So that's how we know that we were, say, maybe about 2 inches. I'm in dead centre. As I said, I went in on the Sunday night and took that level and drilled that hole first through. And that's the first time we were able to speak to one another through this hole. It was only 8 foot of rock between the two at this time. And I drilled the last round that was in it, but I wasn't allowed to fire it because we wanted to give a wee bit till the next shift boss was coming on, who was Tommy Cunningham. And Tommy charged it up and fired it, and then the two sides then, whenever they fired it, the two sides met up. But I had gone home from night shift, but was back again. I wasn't back when the shot was fired, but it just was going off as it was coming back down, and we all met up, and a big jollification, shaking hands and such likes. And
I'm telling you, big do in the Sleeve Donard at lunchtime for the sort of big wigs and more senior people. And I think there was one chap who was also a young engineer, although he had been in I'm not sure if it was the Navy or the RAF, so he was older than my husband, but he ended up sitting on the stairs, the main staircase in the Sleeve Donard, with his head between his knees, and two elderly ladies were passing. This disgusting. Norman always recounted that about this chap Dick Meade King. And then in the evening, for all the shift bosses and so on, there was a do in the Kilmorey Arms in Kilkeel. So Norman was at both of them. So, I mean, he had a heavy day, put it that way. It seemed to be a huge job, huge. But then, as I say, when they met in the middle, that was a big relief. There'd all sorts of rumours going round that missed each other. But they didn't.
Oh, you know the way the crack was. One thing now, some of it laughing about one time. Before maybe when there was still about 100 foot of rock between the two sides, if you put your ear to the side of the tunnel, you could hear the machines going on the other side, through maybe 100 yards away. And you would have thought. In fact, we did think at one time that it was way to the one side, it was past one another. Now, we had a meeting there when it was 50 years done, and they were over from England and they were there from all over, and I remember speaking to an English engineer, and he was saying, even by today's standards, it was a great achievement.
Well, I wouldn't have wanted to move out of the Mournes anyway, no time. It was just, what a nice place to work, and friendly people in it and everything. That was just the best place we could have been.
We would feel that anyway. Probably people would feel different, but that's where you were brought up at, and you look one way and you have the mountains, and you look the other road and you have the sea, so we're in between the two, so you couldn't get much better. Some people would say it would be great if it hadn't so much rain, but that's part of it, isn't it?
Norman and I met at school. We were in the same form, Methody. We used to, from we were, sort of 18, we were into the mountain walking, which continued until almost our old age. And I think Norman was still doing it in his 70s. And I can visualise myself up in nearly any part of the Mournes. Yes, we really loved the Mournes. I love the Mournes.